at all levels is going on, and lands of Mandir have been usurped by the in connivance with the revenue authorities, by the Mahant or the Pujaris, and even restaurants and dhabas are being run on the lands of Mandir Mafi. This is unfortunate that we on the one hand, we maintain the temples, we run the temples, but on the other hand, these things are happening insofar as Rajasthan is concerned, and maybe elsewhere also, because this is being heard that on land of Mandir Mafi temples, heavy encroachments are there, and these should, over the time, be taken back to the for the purpose for which it was granted by the state or princely states at that time, and these should be removed as far as uh, immediately. Therefore, of course, my sister would deal with other aspects. Of course, she has been sitting on this bench itself insofar as the roster of Madras High Court is concerned, and she has excellence not only on this subject but other subjects also. Once again, without wasting much time, I would request Megha or Dr. Komal Odiche to kindly uh, take over and invite the Honorable Chief Guest to hear her. Thank you once again. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you so much, sir. We have Dr. Samuel has joined us. So I invite guest of honor, Professor Samuel Raj, Dean Academics, SRM University, Sonipat, Haryana, to say a few words about SRM University.
Thank you, Dr. Komal. I am also just waiting to listen to Honorable Justice, Srimati Anita, Sumanth, along with all of you. And, without wasting much time, I'll just take just 2 minutes just to say a few words about SRM University. And I'm so glad to see the members from this Ranka Public Charitable Trust. And my special thanks to Dr. Komal for organizing such a excellent event, to collaborate with such a prestigious Ranka Public Charitable Trust. I could see that Honorable Justice B.S. Dave and the family members like Miss Swati Ranka, Miss Surbi Ranka, and maybe somebody else maybe there along with them. My special warm welcome to the members of this very eminent charitable trust, and thank you so much for associating with SRM University to organize such a great lecture from the very eminent and Honorable Justice Anita Sumanth from High Court of Madras. And also, I'm so thankful to all the participants. I know that many eminent scholars are here. And this sort of lectures will really, stimulate. So it will really create interest among the young minds. This is the best legacy, I would say, that Dr. Ranka has created. And the generation of Dr. Ranka, they are following the legacy of, Dr. Ranka. And just talking about SRM University, so this is one of the top private universities in India, which started 50 years back in 1969. It started. And this university where we are situated is in Delhi NCR. This university was established in 2013, when the Haryana government has requested the SRM group in Chennai. But for your kind information, though SRM group is well known for engineering and many other branches in science, technology, humanities, but the law was started first in this particular university in 2014. After the law course started in SRM University, Delhi NCR. Even the last subject was started at SRM Chennai. We have 4 universities, 18 institutions, and medical colleges too. Very soon, we are also going to have a medical college in this campus. And the best part of this law department is they are very, very vibrant. They are very enthusiastic. They take many things very actively and take part in many activities. And for example, today's event is one such example. They take active participation. They initiate. And, in our university, in the law department, we have invited the honorable visitor, the governor of Haryana, and he came here for the law event in our university. We had 2 former central ministers who came here for this law department. We have eminent senior advocates from the Supreme Court of India. Again, it's for the law department. We have the excellent facilities in terms of the moot court and many other things. I can start, telling many things. But as I said in the beginning, I am also eagerly waiting to listen to the chief guest. So without wasting any time, I hand over this session to Dr. Komal Aditya. Over to you, Dr. Komal.
Thank you very much, sir. And we are sorry for due to some technical glitches, we could not get you connected in the beginning. And I know you are going to be within few minutes because you have to attend that academic council meeting. Thank you so much for your gracious presence. We feel very honored to introduce our chief guest of this webinar, Honorable Dr. Justice Srimati Anita Sumanth, Judge, High Court of Madras. She did her graduation from Women's Christian College, Madras, then law also from BL Government Law College, Madras, Masters in Constitution and Public International Law, University of Madras, and PhD she got awarded by National Law School of India, University, Bangalore. She joined the chambers of Senior Advocate Shri V. Ramachandran upon enrollment. She practiced extensively before the Supreme Court, High Courts, tribunals, and other appellate fora, as well as the Authority for Advanced Rulings, specializing in direct and indirect taxes and corporate laws. She held the position of Special Government Pleader, Madras High Court since June 2014, and she was appointed Permanent Judge of Madras High Court in October 2016. So I humbly invite now Honorable Dr. Justice Srimati Anita Sumanth to take over. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction, Dr. Aditya. Honorable Justice V.S. Dave, Honorable Justice J.K. Ranka, Dr. Samuel Raj, Dr. Aditya, ladies, gentlemen, and most importantly, my young student friends. Good evening to all of you. It gives me great pleasure, and it is in fact a privilege for me to be speaking under the auspices of the Ranka Public Charitable and the Rajasthan Educational Trusts. Late Dr. N.M. Ranka was very many things to many people and institutions. He was a very respected senior advocate, a philanthropist, an advisor to many on the law and on life, a Gandhian and a mentor in many ways. I have the All India Federation of Tax Practitioners, the AIFTP, to thank for my association with him and his family. Those were good times indeed, when the tax fraternity often came together in different parts of the country to share intellectual ideals and, equally importantly, fellowship. The trust commemorates various areas of interest that Dr. Ranka was engaged in, and the good work is carried on and ahead by Justice Ranka and his family. Before I share with you my thoughts on this subject itself, I just have two things to say in regard to the opening remarks by Justice Dave. He gave us a long list of very, very illustrious Chief Justices of the country who had spoken in this platform before I did. And I'm sure he didn't intend it to be that way, but it was certainly very intimidating. I do hope I am able to live up to that very tall order indeed. The second is, he mentioned that I'm here today because, to quote him, I have a legacy on the subject, he said. Let me be very candid with all of you. My only legacy, or the only legacy that I would claim to the subject, is the fact that I am a devotee. That apart, I have very little practice in the area of religious institutions and endowments. And much of what I have learned and what I wish to share with you is from my time on the bench. The topic for the day is issues arising from the management of Hindu religious institutions. Straight away, I would make a small modification. You would have noticed that I have removed the word legal from that topic. And that's a disclaimer that I want to put out there very specifically before I start sharing my thoughts. This is not going to be a talk about religion or legal issues that arise from the management of temples, but rather the historical and social context in which I understand this topic. I hope this won't disappoint. But I am not going to touch about Articles 25, 26, or the interpretation of different state statutes that govern the administration of the temples, or whether at all such statutes are called for. I'm fully conscious and cognizant of the debate that has been gaining ground for some years now in regard to whether the administration of Indian religious institutions should be at the instance of the state or whether they should be left at the instance of the religious communities themselves. I will steer clear of this issue. And the reason is this: as Justice Ranka had mentioned in the course of his remarks to us, I am presently hearing issues that touch upon the interpretation of various provisions of the Tamil Nadu enactment for Hindu religious institutions and endowments. And as a matter of propriety, it would not be appropriate for me in these circumstances to traverse the legal issues involved. The constitutionality of several of the state enactments, including the Tamil Nadu enactment itself, are under challenge, and I will thus not venture to comment on any of the legal issues. Having got that out of the way, categorically, I hope, I will now commence. The management of Indian religious institutions has always been a subject of discussion and debate, and this is all the truer with respect to Hindu religious institutions. Churches being part of several defined structures, both internationally and nationally, which oversee and control their management. Mosques by the Waqfs, both at the central and state levels, and Gurudwaras by the Shiromani Guru Prabandhak Committee. I must also lay out that, as I had said earlier, I am going to be speaking to you about those institutions and those locations about which I can claim some peripheral knowledge. And I certainly would not be an authority on all of them. There are, however, some issues that I would like to spotlight that call for correction, notwithstanding whoever might be at the helm of affairs. And this is a very important point, that all of what I am going to say is, in my view, valid, irrespective of whoever is in management of the institutions, be it the state or private entities. Let us get some context first for which some historical narrative would be necessary and in order. Going back to medieval times, there was direct control of religious institutions by kings and emperors that often assumed the garb of secular regulations in order to appease the cosmopolitan mix of their subjects. The sentiments of the rulers were primarily directed towards building the temples and, by extension, owning them and administering them to the fullest with their patronage. Importantly, temples were centers of community activity, and much of the life of a village or town revolved around it. In fact, Dr. Komal mentioned this in the course of her remarks as well. Moving ahead to the times of the East India Company, the scenario in contrast was different. The company did make some attempts to gain legitimacy in religious matters and institutions by participating in Indian religious ceremonies and rituals. But this attempt was by way of resolution of internal disputes of the institution, mostly. The British did not, at any point in time, attempt a direct takeover of religious institutions, as this might have come to be interpreted as a conflict, one that they were not interested or keen in creating. The soft control that was exercised by the East India Company, soft in comparison to the previous eras of medieval and other rulers, does paint a more moderate picture of English control over temples. It was in 1817 that the Madras Endowments and Escheats Regulation was passed, which regulated the due appropriation of rents and produce of lands granted for the support of mosques, Hindu temples, Hindu spelt Hindoo, and colleges or other public purposes, and for the maintenance and repairs of bridges, chowtries, chatrams, and other public buildings, as well as for the custody and disposal of escheats. Under this regulation, a board of revenue was set up, in which would vest the general superintendence of all endowments in land or money that had been granted to religious institutions. The scenario changed somewhat with the coming of the Christian missionaries, and with their coming, British interference, or call it control, if you will, clothed as legitimate cohabitation, was called out. In 1833, the Court of Directors of the East India Company had issued clear directives to their officials in India to disassociate from engagement in religious matters or rites. The directors wrote that all religious rites that were harmless ought to be tolerated, however false the creed by which they are sanctioned. However, they also wrote that, to quote them, the interference of British functionaries in the interior management of native temples, in the customs, habits, and religious proceedings of their priests and attendants, in the arrangement of their ceremonies, rites, and festivals, and generally in the conduct of their interior economy, shall cease. Close quotations. This paved the way also for the broad principles that governed trusts to come into vogue in the matter of religious institutions and be applied here as well. Now, the almost total separation between temple and colonial state came to be achieved in 1863 with the Religious Endowments Act, which said that it would no longer be lawful for any government in India or any officer of any government in official capacity to take over the superintendence of land or property belonging to a mosque, temple, or other religious establishment, to take part in the management or appropriation of a religious endowment, to nominate or appoint a trustee in a religious institution, or, as a residuary clause, to be in any way concerned therewith. So this was the law that was promulgated then. Referring to this law in the Legislative Council, the Lieutenant Governor of Bengal had said that it would rid the government of a burden. In or around 1885-86, with the new resolve of the British to stay clear of intervention in Indian religious institutions and practices, a 6-man commission was set up to look into the working of religious institutions and to recommend measures for their management and administration. Now, the commissioner had as its members persons of eminence, such as Sri Bhashim Iyengar and Sir T. Muthuswami Iyer. Those in the South would certainly be familiar with these names, among others. Their recommendations, interestingly, were that intervention was required since there was widespread and recognized abuses in the administration of temples. Things came to a head with the passing of the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms in 1919, under which the power of legislation shifted somewhat from English hands, to provincial legislatures comprising Indian leaders elected by the Indians. Thus, with more power vesting in the provincial legislatures, the Hindu Temple Nationalization Bill 1921 was drafted but rejected originally. Madras then took a lead in enacting the Madras Hindu Religious Endowments Act of 1926, which was the first formalized legislation which had far-reaching consequences. Far-reaching because this was the statute under which the state virtually took over management and administration of Hindu temples in the province. There has been no looking back since. And thereafter, we have had the 1951 and the 1959 legislations, the 1959 legislation being in operation presently. Now, that was the background as to the circumstances in which we find ourselves presently when it comes to administration and management of Hindu religious institutions. Just to reiterate that this narration was only for the purposes of context and no other purpose. Now, there are, as I said, several issues that I have come to note in the course of my determination as of now that arise in the administration of these institutions. The first is an abysmal lack of accountability. Now, whether this lack of accountability or apathy, as I like to call it, is a consequence of ineffective and corrupt superiors would be moot. Now, the superiors could well be interchangeably read as state, individuals, private entities, what have you. However, suffice it to say that the system in place now enables such lack of accountability and moreover, permits it to permeate through the ranks. Now, this lack of accountability has several serious consequences, the most obvious one being corruption. It is pathetic that this apathy has led to the riches and the resources of several of the institutions not being utilized in a manner that would be beneficial either to the institution itself or to the community. Had there been more interest and initiative displayed by those at the helm of the affairs, accountability would have by now been built into the system. Secondly, the systems that we have in place for establishing continuity in governance are wholly ineffective. As a result, that the free flow of new and effective human capital does not happen. The protocols for ensuring proper succession of hereditary and non-hereditary managers, you may call them trustees, you may call them takkars, you may call them by whatever nomenclature that you may want, but the proper succession, the absence of a proper protocol for timely succession of these managers is not in place, and as a result, it is the institution that suffers. While continuity in management is a must, the scheme of administration of the temples must provide for the infusion of new persons, new minds, new thoughts to carry forward administration and management. There should be a balance achieved between the old and the new. Perhaps this point may have some relevance, bearing in mind the cross-section of audience before me, which comprises the youth. They must involve themselves in the administration of these entities to ensure that they are administered in the proper manner. I'll come to this point shortly because I don't want them to think that this is a discourse on religion. It's the last thing that I intend to do. So I'll elaborate on this point a little later. Coming to the last issue, a Hindu religious institution guarantees a freedom which extends beyond the individual's conscience and concerns public space through the freedom accorded to religious practice. One description of religion in a famous case, you will notice I am not referring to or mentioning any cases at all for the reason that I stipulated earlier. So one description of religion in one case was that religion was, quote, whatever binds a man to his own conscience and whatever moral or ethical principles regulate his life, close quotes. A critical aspect of this religious structure is a temple. A renowned author on temples, not just the religious aspect of temples, but the aspects concerning the agamas, aspects concerning the architecture, as well as a very comprehensive tome on temples, which is a 2-volume tome, is by one Stella Cramrich. And she says about the Hindu temple that it is not merely a heap of brick, stone, or wood, but a visible symbol of aspirations of men and women, the throbbing of their hearts in religious fervor, and their endeavor for the attainment of salvation. This is how she saw it. But generally speaking, a place of worship contains an energy that invigorates. And this is true whether it's a temple or a cathedral or a synagogue or any other place of worship for that matter. I've had the benefit of visiting the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. And for those that do not have a history of this monument, the Hagia Sophia was the largest Christian church of the Eastern Roman Empire, that is the Byzantine Empire, and the Eastern Orthodox Church, except during the Latin Empire from 1204 to 1261, when it became the city's Latin Catholic cathedral. In 1453, after the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Empire, it was converted into a mosque. In 1935, the Hagia Sophia opened to the public as a museum with the unique distinction of having been home to two grand world religions. And after some litigation in 2020, it was again established as a mosque. Can you imagine one grand venue, which has been the seat of a major limb of Christianity and a major limb of Islam that has housed both these religions? The energy and the vibrations that the place had were simply astounding. And this is the point that I wished to make, that a place of worship has an energy. A place of worship, which was the center of a village or a town, has a purpose, which we will come to shortly. Temples were earlier the center of villages and hamlets. They provided livelihood, a safe and secure place for families to congregate in times of war or even otherwise, enough space, resources, and infrastructure to store essentials for the community, an atmosphere that was conducive to art and culture, and one that brought together and unified the residents of that locality. They say that every locality should have a temple. And one thought that I used to have earlier is, why do we go on building new temples when there are so many old temples that are in crying need of maintenance, of restoration, of renovation? Why? Is it necessary to go on building new temples? And then I was told by somebody who's a scholar that the dictates of the faith are that a temple should be there in every community or a a village or a hamlet or a town for two reasons. One is the selection of the location of the temple is very conscious, bearing in mind the best place for that temple in terms of the magnetic resources available, the energy that it produces, etc. And secondly, that it should be accessible to the people of the locality. You should not have to travel 100 kilometers to visit a temple. So forget the religious aspects. You should have a temple as a community center to enable people of the community to be able to go there just for fraternity and fellowship. The temple provided a sanctuary to many people, and that was sufficient. Now, the difficulty is that members of the community did not provide the leadership that was necessary to continue this very wholesome ethos and lifestyle. And this will bring me to the third and the last point in my talk today, which is the major issue, social issue, cultural issue, call it what you will, that faces religious institutions. Apathy of well-meaning groups, including the state itself, with no agenda for proper and efficient management of the temples. Proper and efficient. There may be a system in place, but is it proper? Is it efficient? Cohesiveness is needed to design and put in place a sophisticated system of governance. I'm not for a moment saying that people are unwilling, but when it comes to a temple, there is an inherent indifference to any other aspect of the temple except the religious aspect. We are many a time blind to other aspects of a temple. We are unable to separate religious faith and rituals on the other hand, with pragmatic and efficient governance on the other. And this has, in my view, affected the temple ecosystem greatly. There is a disconnect between the temple and the common man. And the solution lies in revitalizing the temple as a center of public activity. The effort must be made notwithstanding who is at the helm of governance. I hasten to add again and again that I am not preaching religion. There are students here, and you understand the importance of community, the importance of society coming together in order to do service. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Adi Shankara, but in the line of Adi Shankara, we have several persons, and one of the latest persons of that madam was asked, what is it in the Hindu faith that you would say is the most important aspect of it? And he is said to have said, there may be so many Vedas and Upanishads and religious texts, etc. Keep all that aside for the moment. All that you require, all that you need to be a good practicing Hindu is to ensure that there is no harm caused to a living being. There ends the matter. Whether it's a human being, whether it is any other kind of a living being, you ensure that there is no harm caused. And that leads us to service. And that's where I'm coming to ultimately. We can take a leaf out of the churches in this respect. I studied in a convent where moral science and Sunday school were part of the curriculum. I was able to happily marry that with my own background, and I today appreciate aspects of both the faiths. I appreciate a Christmas carol as much as I appreciate a bhajan. And I think we all ought to be able to do that. The Gurudwaras provide a sterling example of governance of religious institutions. The Gurudwara Act of 1925 has set up a central Gurudwara board, which is a custodian of all important Sikh places of worship, a democratic institution for the self-governance of the Sikh temples. They have corporatized the management of religious institutions, and a fine balance has been struck between the religious and the temporal. The service that goes on there is inspirational, be it an Annadanam in the form of the Langar Seva that they do, you must all be knowing of it, or the leadership that they provide in times of national calamities or disasters. You would have seen in the media reports of how much of service that they provide in the ongoing, and they continue to provide in the ongoing pandemic as well. Thus, and I'll conclude now, the purpose of this is to urge that as far as management is concerned, the youth must step in to provide corporate governance. Whoever may be at the helm of affairs, make sure that your ideas on corporate governance, and you have the ideas that are critical and valid today. You are people who are savvy when it comes not just to corporate and management principles, but information technology as well. And I think religious institutions need this today. They need minds that will bring into play corporate principles of governance to ensure that our timeless institutions are able to weather the ravages of time. Thank you very much. I do hope that my talk was not completely offbeat, because I do know that you are looking forward to a talk on the legal aspects of the issues, but I had some limitations as far as that was concerned.
No, we do understand your limitations. Thank you so much for enlightening us with your knowledge. You have given a deep insight into some issues arising from the topic, and also revealed some interesting historical facts also. And you rightly has, just mentioned that place of worship has energy. So we must do something, the pragmatic and efficient approach, what we are talking about for the administration of such religious places. I am a Sikh. So you rightly mentioned, yes. And, right from childhood, we are brought up like that only, that we have to give services there. And when it comes to services, we all gather at one place and we do not mind we are from which strata of the society. And at any time, whether the person belonging to any other religion, we have to give services. And that's what I've seen in the Christianity also, because I remember when I was young, I had joined Mother Teresa's, this center. So the kind of services, they inculcate that in you right from childhood, then it is not a burden. It becomes a routine. So I think you have given a right message to the young attendees of this webinar. Since we teach them everything about corporate management, and technically they are very advanced, so they can provide services to the place where they get so much peace. So any place of worship you enter, the moment you enter that place, you are at peace with yourself. So I think in return, if we can give such services which you have just mentioned, that will be really commendable. Thank you so much, ma'am, for enlightening us on this topic. Now I invite Megha to have the question answer session of this webinar, the most interesting part where the students are going to ask the questions. Over to you, Megha.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for transferring it to me. Ma'am, it was great listening to you. I have personally heard you virtually in Conclave 2018. It was amazing to see at such level when you can express your thought in just simple way that even a layman person can understand it. And if I talk about today, in your whole speech, I have understood about the speciality, about the importance of the religions, yet about the responsibility which comes with the religious belief. That's the main purpose I have understood and you wanted us to tell, and it is very clear to us. Now, Honorable Justice J.K. Ranka sir always focuses on that the student interact, but due to some technical issue, the student will not be interacting with you directly. They have sent me their question. So I'll be asking their question to you. So ma'am, should I start with the first question?
Sure. I'll do my best to clarify any doubts that they may have, bearing in mind the limitations that I had expressed earlier.
Yes, ma'am. Although yours, due to your in your speech, everything has been cleared. We have a very crystallized image of religion institution, whether it's come to judiciary or personal belief. The first question is
not
that,
get
ma'am.
anything legal into it.
Yes, ma'am.
That's
The first question is, ma'am, that India is being known for the religious diversification. We also have a very huge identity on the basis of religion diversification. Can you draw one or two cons of it? We have religion diversification in India, due to which there are a very massive killing and protest against each other's religions. So can you just draw down some points in which we can, decrease them? Should we move to the
That's
second question now?
That's a personal journey that each person has to undertake to
Yes.
come to the realization that that's not the purpose of why we are here. And going back to what I had said in the course of my talk, if each of us perhaps engages with our faith, your faith may be absolutely anything. That's your discretion, that's your freedom, it's your choice. It should be respected by everybody else. As Dr. Komal had also mentioned, your service, if you look at why you are here as an opportunity to serve somebody, irrespective of who it may be, I think we will not have any occasion for such a question to be asked at all. But there's very little that one can do in terms of teaching such things. It's a matter of inculcating these sentiments. And like I said, it's a personal journey. It's a goal that each of us have to reach by ourselves. I hope that answers the question to some extent.
Exactly, ma'am. This can be the most appropriate answer to it. Now, ma'am, the clinch has been solved. So I would like to invite Shiv Ganga to ask her question from you. Shiv Ganga, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
We can hear you. You may start.
Okay, ma'am. My question is that, ma'am, don't you think it's a high time for there should be a more restriction imposed over the government in utilizing the fund for the development of any particular temple or the welfare of such institutions, as many of the states use this fund for other purpose than the development of such institutions. Like, I am from Kerala, ma'am, to say, I had seen many times this resources has been used for other purposes than the development of the temple. And many Brahmins, or the ones who are doing as the job of priest, are forced to leave such institutions or double their work for their living at this condition.
I didn't get your name.
My name is Shivaganga, ma'am.
Shivaganga. Thank you for your question, Shivaganga. Shall we point a finger to ourselves rather than pointing a finger at somebody else? Now, like I said, who governs the religious institution is a different thing altogether, and one question that I would not like to traverse. But you mentioned certain instances in Kerala itself, and I'm sure that perhaps there are such grievances pan-India, perhaps. But if we are to point a finger to ourselves and to ensure that each one of us plays an active role in ensuring that when there is a grievance, it is addressed, brought to the notice of the authorities. How many of us do that? The grievances may well be redressed. You may think that I am speaking in a very idealistic way and an impractical manner, but how many have tried to ensure that these grievances are brought to the notice of the authorities, brought to the notice of people who can actually address them? Let that attempt be made. Coming to who would be the best to govern the temples, That's not a question that I would like to dwell on. Is that all right, Shivaganga?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your reply.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am, for answering this question. I am definitely sure that Shivganga has get a very nice answer to this question. Next for round, we have the question from Anant Vashisht. His question is, ma'am, may I start?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, ma'am. His name is Anant Vashisht. His question is, why can't government take control of the wealth of temples and use it for public good?
There again, this is a difficult question and not a road that I'd like to travel on. Please pardon me, Anant.
No, ma'am. We genuinely understand it that it is a very sentimental topic, and it is a very nice of you that you are even listening to these questions.
No, not
and
at
we respect.
Shivaganga was from the state of Kerala, and I must incidentally mention that Kerala is a state which is very close to my heart, and the temples there, right from Guruvayur to Chota Nikara to possibly Kadambura to every other temple, are all temples which are very, very close to my heart. Temples must be seen in the state of Kerala for the kind of their adherence to cleanliness and the kind of atmosphere that you would have in the Kerala temples. From the little experience that I have in visiting all the temples, are simply beautiful. Yes, we'll take the next question.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Ruhi Sharma, ma'am, from Chennai only. She's from Chennai only. She has messaged me. The next question is, ma'am, she wanted to ask that whether there should be a constitution of eco committee which looks into the economic matter, that ecological matter of the state, like you also told in your speech.
That's a great idea.
Yes.
Ruchi Sharma, you said?
Ruhi, ma'am.
Ruhi Sharma. That's a great idea, Ruhi. We have the Archaeological Survey of India, which is already doing a lot of in this regard. And in fact, many of the temples all over the country are under the care of ASI. And we find that those temples, the structures are maintained constantly and regularly by the ASI. Now, having said this, we cannot have enough institutions that take care of these fragile temples. And having suggested this, it would be a great thing to start a student's trust or a student's body that could look into the question of perhaps identifying and of seeing which are the temples that are there, which need to be put under the care of the ASI. You have to collate them. You will have to make recommendations to the ASI. And that would be a great service in itself. That's a great idea. And I would strongly urge that having put out this idea, you should follow up on it. Would you do that?
Not, ma'am. Actually, the idea of constituting a student-aimed body is very nice because, ma'am, we understand that youth is the next future, and as important as youth come up and take up the responsibility of these blunders, there could have been a better, responsible way of handling things.
Therefore, I take it that the next time you meet, you will have this organization up and running.
Honorable Justice J.K. Ranka sir can do it. He have master in doing it. Earlier than N.M. Ranka was there. Now J.K. sir have taken up all these responsibility and he's doing brilliantly well in it.
Justice Ranka can only do this much. He can perhaps head it. But ultimately, we will need all your efforts. We will need your strength, your efforts, your energy, your time to be able to conserve this history of the country.
Yes, ma'am. I want
an assurance from all of you that you will do it. Don't pass the buck to Justice Ranka.
No, ma'am. We will not. We will not. We will try our best to shape our country in a better position. So, ma'am, this is all in the question and answer.
This is a challenge to my young friends given by my sister Anita ji, that you must come up to the expectations of the elders, or we persons, that you take over the, because you have the energy, vigor, enthusiasm to do wonders and create wonders.
The idea came from them, Justice Ranka. The idea came from them,
Very well. Yes.
not from me. So it's for them to implement it.
Actually, it's not only about the idea, it's about the attentiveness, that how can you bring out a very most positive thing about the question. So what you did actually, and we'll just concentrate in it and we will do something to help it out.
That'll
So
be
by
good.
this, yes, ma'am, thank you so much for your amazing speech, and the way you answer the question answer round was very inspiring. Not even being lacking to the answering us the justice path, even you maintained your limits also, but we got answer for every question. By this, ma'am, I would like to end our question answer round and invite Komal ma'am to please proceed further.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megha. And thank you so much, Honorable Justice, for patiently answering all the questions. In fact, all the young attendees must, have the knowledge that the judgment which you gave recently, where you permitted, the Madras High Court permitted Hindu religious and charitable endowments department to carry on with the consecration of the temple at Dharumapuram, but the court recorded that no devotee would be allowed to participate in the consecration, and that only 360 to 380 temple staff would take part with mask and by following physical distance norms. So that was a remarkable judgment by Madras High Court, and thanks to you for, sometimes when the religious matter is there, so I think when you are on the bench, you have to be very careful, because everyone in India, especially when it comes to religion, they become very emotional. So thank you for such remarkable judgments. Now I invite Srimati Surbi Ranka to propose vote of thanks.
May I just,
Yeah.
may I step in for a moment? I just see in the chat 2 questions.
Okay. Megha, could you please read out those questions to ma'am?
Surely, ma'am. Let's just.
Thank you so much.
One from Dr. Sashi Sharma.
Thank you so much for noticing those questions. Megha, you please read out those questions.
Sure, ma'am. People, may I start, ma'am?
Please.
Yes, the question is from Dr. Shashi Sharma, ma'am. People no longer expect justice from the court. They want to settle disputes through mutual dialogue. Is the trust of the people being breached by the justice system?
Very well. I don't know why Dr. Sashi Sharma says they no longer expect justice from the court. There may be reasons such as delay in the systems, etc. But having said that, she has made a very important point about settlement of disputes through mutual dialogue. This may not be an issue that is directly concerning our topic for the day, but maybe indirectly concerning it. We have alternate dispute resolution mechanisms that have assumed great importance in today's times, such as arbitration, mediation, and conciliation. And arbitration, which had taken the field about maybe a decade ago, is now slowly fading to the background because of the costs involved, etc. And it is mediation that comes to the fore. And mediation, in effect, is a dialogue between the litigants, with the mediators only facilitating the resolution of that difficulty or that issue, whatever it may be. So yes, Dr. Sharma, I agree with you that alternate dispute resolution mechanisms are not just the crying need of the hour, because if only we could settle disputes by ADR systems, the burden on the courts in terms of the docket explosion would also come down very substantially. So yes, that's a point well taken. There was one that I see in regard to whether courts use the ancient justice system.
Megha, could you
Yes,
read out that question?
ma'am, next question we have from Ayushi Singh. Ma'am, there are many such institutions and laws that have helped towards religious organization and issue. Then where are we really lacking?
Perhaps the answer is in your question itself, Ayushi. There are many such institutions. Perhaps there are too many, with a lack of cohesiveness in them. When one is working towards a common goal, perhaps it will help to have one apex institution that collates the ideas. You know, in Tamil Nadu itself, we have got 44,000 temples, 44,000 and odd temples. Look at the figure, pan-India. Therefore, what we need is perhaps a coming together of the ideas. And whichever is the body which is at the forefront would have to provide an avenue for voices to be heard. And if there are disparate voices that are being heard, it's very difficult to implement every suggestion. So if one speaks with, say, 2 or 3 voices, then it may be more effective as a system. This is my suggestion.
Megha, that's it?
Yes, ma'am. This is the all question which we have in our chat box.
Okay. So thanks again to Honorable Justice for noticing those questions and answering them. Thank you so much, ma'am. I hope the young generation, start visiting the temples. I think we are talking about services. They have stopped going to the temples. In fact, I always tell my students that it's not that, there is a routine that in the morning you get up, take bath, and then visit the temple. That brings discipline in your life. Because for them, early to bed, early to rise is out of syllabus now. So for them, even visiting a temple, they think it's not required only. So they have become addicted to other things. But the thing is, it gets discipline in your life. True. And moreover, if you visit a temple, if you believe somewhere in God, that makes you a wonderful human being.
I would perhaps emphasize on the fact that
who is there, yaar?
Temples would have so many other uses in terms of just being a community center. We have had instances where there were concerts, dance and music concerts organized in temples. So you need not go to a temple to pray to the deity, because your calling may be entirely different and nobody is going to trust that calling on you. But you can visit it as an ancient monument, yes, to admire the architecture, to enjoy the cool breeze, to listen to a concert, which is where you need fresh ideas on how you can make these temples focal points of community life.
Yes, what it used to be in the earlier times also. That's right. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I invite Srimati Surbi Ranka to propose vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Honorable Dr. Justice Anita Sumanth, ma'am, Judge, High Court of Madras, Honorable Mr. Justice V.S. Dave, Honorable Justice J.K. Ranka, respected Dr. Samuel Raj, Dean Academic, SRM University, respected Professor Kumal Aditya, Head Department of Law, SRM University, the dignitaries, the lawyers, professors, and dear law students who are the future torchbearers of justice. It is my honor and privilege to propose vote of thanks of this 10th Dr. N.M. Ranka Memorial Lecture Series organized by the Ranka Public Charitable Trust in association with the SRM University of Haryana and Rajasthan Education Trust. On behalf of the entire organizing team, I would like to sincerely extend a vote of thanks to Honorable Dr. Justice Srimati Anita Sumanth, ma'am, for your valuable time. The way you gave the context by giving the historical narrative about the religious establishments, taking us centuries back, and then to the British times, the reforms, the legislations passed, the issues which arose related to accountability, to governance, etc., to the present day issues and situations, have enlightened all of us about the deliberated issue with so much ease and clarity. You have eagerly answered the questions from the students so effortlessly, ma'am, that none other than you could have been more suitable for today's deliberation. Thank you so much. We all have certainly gained a lot by hearing you. This lecture shall go a long way in the memory for all here. We extend our kindest gratitude and warmest regards to you for gracing us, and it was an absolute pleasure and privilege to hear you today. A deep sense of appreciation and gratitude also goes out to Honorable Justice V.S. Dave Uncle for your continuous association with us like family, your precious time and views on today's deliberation. It is always a pleasure hearing you. Thank you. And I'm deeply thankful to the eminent personalities, professors, and lawyers, our YouTube viewers, the students who devoted their time towards this session and who have been present for this lecture series. The presence of each of you has given the team the impetus to continue hosting this monthly lecture series with greater fervor and enthusiasm. We appreciate each one of you for making this success. I want to express my gratitude to the SRM University and the Rajasthan Education Trust for the valuable support, and we look forward for your continued involvement for our future events. The backbone to this event are the ever enthusiastic and passionate bunch of students, without whom this event would not have been possible. I would like to express my sincere thanks to Megha, Path, to Rishiji, and to each one of them in the team who have worked tirelessly to bring up this event for all of us. The inspiration behind this lecture series, our Bade Papa, Dr. Shri N.M. Ranka, who continues to be the guiding light for all our future endeavors. He had a magnanimous and enigmatic persona, so much full of discipline and dedication to his profession that he is remembered with immense love and respect by all of us. With this, once again, we are very grateful to Honorable Dr. Justice Anita Sumanth ma'am and everyone present in this lecture series for making it a success. We promise to continue the plethora of knowledge and insightful deliberations with our best efforts. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you, Subhi Ranka, ma'am. I think Honorable Justice J.K. Ranka would also like to express gratitude to Honorable Justice.
Yeah, certainly. I would like to thank my sister for being with us this evening, and of course, Honorable Justice V.S. Dave Uncle.
And thank you very much, each of you.
Constantly,
it was a very, very learned discourse.
Constantly guiding me in our endeavor. And thank you, Megha. She has become a lawyer recently for the benefit of Anita ji. Megha, who is organizing all these show parts, they recently last week only become a lawyer and organizing all these events with us. So congratulations to Megha on becoming a lawyer. Do well, and all good wishes to my young team and students who have participated and joined hands. Thank you, Surmi, Dr. Komal Aditya, for your vigor and enthusiasm which you have given in this webinar. All the best. God bless you all. Thank you, Anita ji, Doctor, and everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, sir. And I again express my gratitude to all the esteemed guests of the webinar for their presence and for their contribution to the webinar. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'm going to visit Kerala soon. Thank you so much.
It will be a great experience.
And you have given another pathway to follow to the youth of the webinar. They are, I think, going to pay services at the temples and all. And the corporate management is very alluring for them. And I think they will understand when they visit the temple next time. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thanks to all the esteemed guests and the attendees. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be in this event and to listen to everyone. Thank you so much.